did for broadcast journalism during World War II, Stars and Stripes was doing for print. And Nyla in Canandaigua, New York is asking us to turn back the clock to salute one of the greatest journalists from that time. She wants the lowdown on Bill Mauldin, a cartoonist who brought the war home like nobody else could.
You know, Bill Mauldin said it best himself. Humor, he wrote, is laughing off a hurt, grinning at misery. And all through World War II, Bill Mauldin got GIs and grandmas and everyone in between to find a well-needed laugh when the grim realities of war didn't seem very funny at all.
I think that among all the cartoonists that have covered wars from the very beginning up until modern time, I don't think anybody did it as good as Bill Mauldin did. His work showed a reality that no one has really been able to illuminate, either before or since.
Mauldin's wartime cartoons starred a pair of grimy, combat-weary foot soldiers named Willie and Joe. And the reason their exploits were so realistic was because Bill Mauldin was living their lives right alongside of them as a sergeant with the Army's 45th Division.
He knew the hardships, the deprivations, bad food, not getting enough sleep, sleeping in foxholes, carrying way too much gear in conditions where people really shouldn't be living. And the characters really reflected that. He felt for the infantrymen because he really understood who they were, what they were all about, and what they were really going through.
Bill Mauldin enlisted in the U.S. Army back in 1940. He trained as an infantry rifleman. But the brass soon saw that his real talent was entertaining the troops with his cartoons. When his division shipped overseas, Mauldin's Willie and Joe made their debut in the Army newspaper Stars and Stripes. Mauldin was often up front, talking and hanging out with the ground pounders, getting new ideas for cartoons. In 1943, during fighting in Italy, Mauldin stayed a little too long at the front and got caught in an enemy artillery barrage. He was wounded and received the Purple Heart. Mauldin didn't sugarcoat anything. He didn't pull any punches either, especially when it came to sounding off about officers.
Mauldin liked to fight the system. He was a rebel. There's a classic cartoon where two officers are looking at a sunset. One of them turns to the other and says, "What a beautiful sunset. Is there a view for the enlisted men?" This was the classic Bill Mauldin. He loved poking fun at the leadership.
The GIs loved it, but some of the top brass was not amused.
Patton despised Mauldin's work. Mauldin took a lot of direct shots at Patton, and Patton took that as a personal affront.
Now, Patton didn't like Mauldin's Willie and Joe looking like a pair of bums. The general wanted them to be clean-shaven and decked out in pressed uniforms. Well, Mauldin knew that Patton's idea of how a frontline GI should look was BS, and Mauldin refused to clean him up. Patton threatened to have Mauldin arrested. Now, maybe Patton was just exaggerating, but it didn't hurt Bill's rep with the dog faces who loved him. During the war, Mauldin published some collections of his cartoons in books. And in 1945, Mauldin got himself a Pulitzer Prize for editorial cartooning. Now, believe it or not, he was only 23 years old, the youngest guy at that time to get the Pulitzer Prize. But fancy schmancy awards from New York hotshots didn't amount to a hill of beans for Bill Mauldin. His reward was the tens of thousands of GIs who loved Willie and Joe like brothers. Those old soldiers kept the fan mail coming until Mauldin's death in 2003.
Bill Mauldin showed us just about every aspect of the average Joe's life on the front, except for one. In hundreds of cartoons, Mauldin never once drew a dead body. Because maybe Bill was dedicated to showing the human side of the war. And he also had the guts to pull a chuckle or two out of the GIs who didn't have a hell of a lot to laugh about.